in the northernmost reach of Yorkshire, where the mist rolls like breath from the buried, there lies a hollow untouched by sun or song, a village, not marked on any map, and known only by those who no longer walk the living world, a place called Grimsby Hollow, though even the ravens whisper it low, as if to speak. It too clearly might summon the thing that waits beneath its soil. And it was to this place that I, Erasmus Pell, a scholar of forgotten theologies and forbidden architectures, was summoned one bitter winter by a letter that bore no return address and smelled faintly of salt and soot, a letter penned in deep brown ink, the color of dried blood, and signed with the name I had once sworn never to utter again. Elsenor, my brother, long presumed dead, vanished at sea 31 years prior, taken with our father's ship and our family's pride, and yet his hand had written this letter, unmistakable in its fevered strokes, calling me to a place I had only ever heard of in hushed warnings between scholars at the edge of sleep and sanity. And so I went, drawn not by love nor duty, but by the gnawing curiosity that ruins all good men, riding alone into the moorlands, where the wind screamed and the heather clawed at the hooves of my mount. And when I arrived, the village was smaller than rumour had painted, a scattering of houses half swallowed by the earth, rooftops green with moss, doors half open, the faces behind the windows still and watching but never blinking, never moving, their eyes hollow, as if memory had been drained from them. And at the centre of the village, rising like a black tooth, stood the bell tower, not attached to any church, but solitary, standing sentinel over nothing, its spire cracked, its windows bricked, and at its apex a single bell hung silent, pale and smooth, and not made of any metal I have ever known. It glistened like bone under moonlight, and though the air was still, it seemed to sway gently, as if it were breathing. I found my brother's house at the edge of the hollow, leaning hard to one side as if tired of resisting gravity. The door opened with a sound like a sigh, and inside was cold to cold, the hearth untouched, the candles burned down to husks. And there, in the far corner, I saw him, Elsenor, not as I remembered, not as the boy I once knew, but a bent and greyed creature of skin stretched thin over trembling bone, eyes too wide, mouth slightly open, standing in absolute stillness and staring into a fireplace that had never been lit. He turned to me with a slowness that spoke of great pain or great caution, and said, "Only, you heard it, didn't you?" And before I could answer, I knew I had, not with my ears, but with something deeper, some sense below hearing, a toll in the marrow of my bones, a sound that existed before sound. And I asked him, "What bell? What is this place? What called me here?" But he only smiled, and that smile was not his, not my brother's. It was a smile carved onto a face that no longer knew warmth. And that night I did not sleep, not because I feared dreams, but because I feared what waited between them. And yet, despite my resistance, I heard it again, louder this time, as if it rang from within my own skull. Slow, deep, and impossibly heavy, a toll that did not echo but continued on forever. And when I awoke, I found a mark upon my hand, a circle with jagged edges, like a bell shattered from within, and outside the villagers stood in silence, all facing the tower, all with mouths slightly agape, as if waiting for something to return. I asked them what the bell was, who built it, why it rang, but they would not speak, and when I touched one man's shoulder, he collapsed like dust, nothing inside but a thin husk, as if life had long since left, but the shape remained to observe. I returned to Elsenor's house, but he was gone. Not a trace remained save a journal bound in something that felt too soft to be leather, and on its first page were the words, "The bell is not of this world, and neither is what answers it." The pages were covered in spirals and inked prayers, drawn maps of things that should not have geometry. And a single repeated sentence: it rings to be heard, it rings to be seen, it rings to be let in. And I, fool that I am, climbed the tower, for what else could I do? What else does the cursed mind crave but confirmation? And as I climbed, the air grew thick and the world narrowed until only the ringing remained, not loud but endless. And at the top I saw it, the bell, not swinging but pulsing, alive, its surface webbed with tiny cracks from which leaked a mist blacker than night. And when I looked into its hollow, I did not see darkness. I saw a vast expanse, an eye, wide and ancient, not watching me, but watching through me, as though I were the bell, as though I were the thing it waited to ring. And then it did, not with sound, but with certainty. A rupture in the air, a truth spoken not aloud, but into the bones of the world. And I fell, or was pulled. And when I awoke, it was dusk, and Elsenor stood above me, his mouth open wider than a man's mouth should go. And from it came not breath but wind, shrieking and full of whispers. And then he collapsed into ash, and the tower groaned, and the bell rang again, and the villagers knelt as one, their heads bowed, their backs arched, and they began to hum, low and tuneless. And I ran from that place with no direction, only away. But even now I hear it, not every night, but some nights when the world grows to quiet, I hear it, and I know it hears me back. And I know one day I will answer, and so I tell you this, stranger, not as warning but as prelude, because if you hear the bell in your dreams or in your blood, do not search for its source, do not follow the hum, do not look into the fog, because once it rings for you, it never stops. And if you've heard it once, truly heard it, then it is already too late.